Assalamualaikum and a very good day. Today we are going to look at topic. We are still under traditional assessment. If you remember, traditional assessments involve traditional manner of doing assessment of learning, and these include tests and examination. So we are still within testing, and we're going to look at measures of central tendency. And this is the part where we do calculations. And the calculation part comes after we are done with scoring and grading. So as teachers, when we go through the process of testing, we start with test planning, where we plan for our test. So we fill up the table of specifications or jadual spesifikasi ujian. And then we develop our test items in accordance to this table of specifications. And then we carry out test assembly or the process of test improvement before we have a set of complete tests that is free of any grammatical errors that have been structured accordingly and vice versa. All right. And then teachers delve into the process of test administration where they gather test responses from students. This refers to the testing day, all right, where students come and sit down in the hall or in a room or within virtual setting and answer your test items. And then what do we do after that? Now that we have gathered all the test responses, we need to make sense and interpret these responses into meaningful information of our students' learning. So we score and grade our students' responses. Okay, now that we have in our hands a set or a collection of students' mark or students' score, right? So teachers' job does not end at reporting. Of course, we will report our student scores to the stakeholders. These include the students themselves, the parents, our bosses, and the relevant parties who are interested with the assessment results. In addition to that, there's another process that teachers have to carry out in order to determine how effective are the items that teachers have developed, known as item analysis. But in addition to item analysis, teachers need to make sense of these scores so that it can inform their intervention strategies. Okay, so whatever things that we are going to learn in this video, this covers the process of making sense of students' scores. Student scores are just numbers. They may represent how much have students learned, but they can inform us for richer information than just how much have students learned. We can compare student performances across group, across schools, and also this can provide meaningful information to us in improving our own teaching strategies and teaching methods. So all of this can be done by making sense of our test scores. Well, that's quite a lengthy information. So the first part of this making sense process is known as measures of central tendencies. It sounds mouthful, it sounds complicated, but don't fret because you have learned this while you were in secondary school. So this will just be sort of like a revision, okay? But something that you need to look at and do in your assignment. All right, so I'm going to move my face away. Oh, I can't. Okay, let me see what can I do with this style that I have here. All right, I'm working with a new Loom setting. Previously, I can just drag my face around on the screen, but now I can't. It's fixed at one location on the screen, but it's fine. So we're going to look at the slides on measures of central tendency. So I'm going to explain in this video what exactly are measures of central tendency, how you can use formula to calculate these measures and whatnot. And then in the second part or in the second video, I'll show you how the calculation is done based on an exercise so that we can't just cut short this video and have one specific video that focuses on one specific aspect. All right. So first and foremost, measures of central tendency. As I've mentioned, it sounds mouthful and complicated, but it's not. What it means is that measures of central tendency are simply mood, median, and mean. But what exactly are they? Even though you have covered these topics, you've done calculation for all of these three measures when you were in secondary school, what exactly do they serve us in terms of testing context as well as teaching and learning context? Okay, let's go through this. Typically, after you've done a test, you will get a set of scores. All right. I just want to make sure that I'm within the camera focus. Okay. So, say for example, this is a data set of test 1. All right. And you are the class teacher of 3 Cempaka. And this is tingkatan 3 Cempaka. And this is a data set from test 1 PSB. All right. So after you've done test 1, you'll have student scores, right? So this is, just move this slightly downwards. Okay. So some of your students will get very good marks, but some are here. So the more you move to the right, the higher is the student score. So the maximum score is 100, and this is number of students. Okay, assuming that you're able to read my handwriting. Right, so you have some students scoring very low scores, you have some students scoring very high scores, but most of your students are jammed here, something like that. So 1x is one student score. Okay, so if I were to turn this particular chart into a curve, I'll have something like this. Bukit Maxwell in Taipei. Okay, this is known as normal curve. Right? Why is it normal curve? What is so normal about this? Typically, this is the tendency for scores to be like. Okay, humor me. When you walk into a classroom, okay, any classroom for that matter, it is very impossible to find a group of students within that class that is at exactly the same level of ability. All right. So even when the school practices streaming, like high ability students are grouped in one group and low ability students are grouped in another group, for example. So we have different classes and whatnot. But even within that stream class, you will still be able to see variability in academic performance. Even in a very good class, you have within that group some students, they are far more highly capable than other students. Okay, so typically when you walk into a classroom, so say for example, this is the level of ability, the higher you go, the more capable are the students, or the higher the ability of the students. Okay, so we'll have, this is one classroom. We have some very low ability students. We don't have a lot of them, but there will be some students. There'll be some students who are high ability students in comparison to others within the group, but most of the students are here. Okay, somewhere in the middle. All right, so low ability, high ability, and middle ability students. Okay, so this is what it means by normal curve in the sense of the context that we are talking at the moment. It is common to observe students' academic ability in this manner when you walk into any particular classroom. All right, so okay, excuse me for a moment, I need to pick up this call. All right, let's continue. What's life without interruptions? So, when teachers teach, okay, teachers, teacher, when a teacher teaches, the teacher will usually auto adjust the level of the complexity of the content that he or she is teaching to the students within mid ability range. Okay. And this is known as whole class approach, one way of teaching that is intended for all of the students. But usually the teachers will be targeting the academic ability of the students within this particular group. Of course, there's a danger to this, but this is more when it comes to pedagogy, methodology of teaching rather than assessment. So I'm going to reserve that to people who are within that particular areas. But from the perspective of item development, when we as teachers develop items, we must be aware of the students' range of level of abilities so that our items are able to capture, okay, these are our items in terms of level of difficulties and complexities. So it should be able to capture the ability of the students from the lower level up to the high level within that particular group. Okay, so how do we do this? One of the ways is by having items that address all the levels of the Bloom's taxonomy as they increase in terms of the level of complexity. All right. So that's slightly off topic, but still related in a way. It's still important to be mentioned. Okay, so this is the normal curve. All right. And of course, if you happen to teach in high performing schools or good schools, for example, like MRSM, so it will be skewed like this, right? But usually, when we talk about the typical context of our classrooms and students' ability levels, they are represented by this normal curve. Bukit Maxwell ini ya. Okay, let me just get to my slide. Okay, so when we have a set of scores, in order for us to better understand the performance of all our students within a group, if we want to understand our group performance, how has this particular group performed in our test, we need to find one score that is located here that describes the score of everybody else within this group. Okay, regardless of what the score is, if you are able to find this one value here, one score that is located here, then this score is able to explain everybody else's score within this group. And this one score is known as measure of central tendency. Okay, so measure of central tendency is basically a single score or one value that describes the score of everybody else's within that group. And there are three ways to find measure of central tendency, either by finding the mean value or the mode or the median. Okay, so such a long explanation just to get to this point. So that's what it means by mean, mode, and median within the context of testing. Okay, and we identify these three values after test administration has been carried out and after we have scored and graded student score. All right. So let's look at the first one, which is mode. What exactly is mode? I'm sure you still remember. If you can't, then let me enlighten you. Mode is the most frequent score or the most frequent value in the data set. The value that is the most repeated. Am I saying it correctly? It does sound off, isn't it? Okay. It's pretty easy to find. In fact, it doesn't require any calculation at all. And if you are working with a small data set, so we call a group of scores as data sets. Okay, so if you don't have a lot of students within that group or within that class, then your data set will be small, and it's pretty easy to find mood just by looking. All right, so let's look at this data set. This is a data set of the retirement age of 11 people within that particular year. Okay, so what is the mode? So mode is the most repeated value in any particular data set. So in this respect, 54 is the mode because of the 11 people. There are 3 people who retired at the age of 54. Okay, so that's the answer. The mode is 54. So for example, if this is a data set of a student score and there are 11 people or 11 students in that data set, so what is the mode of this score? The mode is 54, which means that 54 is the score that most people in this group obtained. Okay, it simply means like this. 54 is here. 54 is the measure of central tendency. If you are using mode as your measure of central tendency, you are simply assuming or saying that because mode is the most frequent score, then mode is a reliable method or mode is a reliable value to describe the score of everybody else within this group. Okay, sebab dia yang paling banyak kali diulang. Alright, so that's mode. Now we move to median. Median is a word from a Latin word, means middle. It has the same meaning as medieval. Alright, so to find the value here, if you are using median to decide on this value, then you are saying that the middle score of everyone in this group is considered as the measure of central tendency. Okay, so if you still remember how to find a median base within a data set, it's pretty easy. You just need to find the middle score. That would be easy if we have odd cases or odd number of cases in our data set. So for example, the Doran family has 6 children. Okay, I'm going to change this to 5. Let me just get to the right slide first. Okay. Let me just get rid of one value or one case. Okay, so let's look at this. Doran family has 5 children, age, according to this data set. What is the age of the middle child? So what exactly we are looking for is the median or the middle value of Doran family's children. Okay, so of course, it's easy when you are looking at very small data set. Like for example, we only have 5 cases here. So you don't really have to arrange them in any particular order. You can just look for the answer right away. So, but usually when you are working with larger data set, for example, 30 students with multiple scores, okay? So you need to arrange your data set according to ascending or descending order from the lowest score to the highest score, all right? And find the middle score. And that will be your median. In relation to the context that we are looking at now, Doran has 5 children, so we arrange them according to age, according to ascending order from 9, 12, 13, 16, 17. So what is the age of the middle child? So The age of the middle child is 13 because this is the middle value. Okay. Of course, it's easier to find median when your data set has odd number of cases. For example, this is 5 cases. So you can obviously look for the one in the middle. But what if your data set consists of even number of cases? So how do we determine the median value then? Susah je nak cakap. Okay. All right. So let's look at this. The same family now has a new addition to the family. They have 6 children. So we need to arrange according to ascending or descending order. So this has been arranged from the youngest to the oldest. Now, what's the age of the middle child? Or what's the what's the median value of the children? Or what is the median age of children in Doran families? Susah nak sebut. Okay. So now we have 2 cases that appear in the middle, 12 and 13. So how do we find the median value? Just add these 2 numbers up or add these 2 values up and then divide by 2. It's always when you try to look for median, you always divide by 2. Why 2? Why not 4 or 6? Okay, because this involves only 2 cases. There are only 2 values in the middle. So we add them up and we divide by 2. So what you get is 12.5. This is not correct. All right. So it's 12.5 after you have divided them by 2. All right. So clear? So what we are saying is that if we are using median as our measure of central tendency, instead of using mode is the most frequent score. And we say that mode is a score that can represent everybody else's score. But if you were to use median, okay. So what we are saying is that it's the middle value that actually provide us with one score that explains everybody else's score. Okay. And finally, let's get to mean. Right? Okay. Of the three measures of central tendency, mean is the most reliable. Okay, because mean is the only measure that takes into consideration all cases scores within that particular group. What exactly am I saying here? First and foremost, what exactly is mean? Mean simply means average. Okay, you're looking for average score. And between looking at mean, mode, and median of the three, mean is the best value to be used to describe your data set because it represents everybody's score within that data set. For example, if you are using mode as a value here, you are not looking at less frequent score. The only value that you take into consideration is the one that is the most frequent or repeated for most number of times. Okay, but you do not consider other value that are not repeated most number of times. Okay, if you are using median as a value here, then you are only using the score that is located right in the middle. And you are saying that because this is a middle score, then it should be the one that we put here. Okay, so scores that are not located in the middle, scores that are lower, or scores that are higher than this middle value are not even being considered. Okay, but mean, in contrast, in order to calculate mean or in order to find average value, you need to consider all of the scores that are available within that data set. Okay, so how do we find mean? We add all the scores and divide by the number of cases. So if you have 30 students, for example, you add all of these scores and you divide by 30. And then you get your mean value. Okay, because in order to find average, we add all of these scores up and get the average value and assign the average value here as a mean, as a measure of central tendency. So mean is considered as the most reliable than mode or median. Okay, I hope I'm making sense. I hope that you're able to follow what I'm saying. Okay, so in your assignment, you will be asked to calculate all the three measures of central tendency. You'll be asked to find mean, mode, and median value. Okay. And then you will be asked, after you have presented all of these values, of the three measures of central tendency, which score is the best score that you should use as your measure. Most of the time, you should pick mean as your measure of central tendency. But there are exceptions. Okay? What exactly do I mean by there are exceptions? Let's look at this question. We have a data set of 10 people who are the staff at Intellectual, and this is their salary per annum or per annual from Ali up to Malik. Okay, let us calculate the mean salary for the staff at this company. Okay, humor me. Let us find all the three measures of central tendency for this data set. Take some time now and try to calculate and find out what's the mode, median, and mean of this data set. All right, so are you done calculating? Have you found out the value for mode, median, and mean based on this data set? If you have, let us check whether you have found or whether you have calculated these measures correctly. Okay, let me just move to the side and get my magic whiteboard out. Okay, the first value or the first measure is mode, median, and mean. Okay, so mode is the most frequent score. As I've mentioned, it doesn't involve any calculation at all. What you need to look are simply the most repeated scores in that data set. So with regard to this data set, the mode is 15K because there are three staff in Intellectual who earned 15K per year. That's really low, isn't it? Okay, in terms of salary. Right. The next one is the median. So how do you find median? So median can be a bit tricky if you are working with a slightly large data set because you can't just look and find it. You have to structure them first according to certain order. So let us just arrange this according to ascending order from the least amount of salary to the most amount of salary. I'm just going to put it here somewhere. Okay. And then we have 13 staff earning 15. I may not have sufficient space in this whiteboard. 16, 17, 18, and then we have 90 and 95. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we have correct number of cases. So this is from ascending to the least amount of salary to the most amount of salary. So what we need to do is to find the middle value. So since we have 10 people, the middle value would be the salary received by the fifth and sixth people in this data set. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 5 and 6. Okay, so we have two staff here because our number of cases are even number of cases. So that's why we are left with two staff. So how do we determine the median then? Just add these two up 15 plus 16 divided by 2. So 15 plus 16 divided by 2 because there are two people here. So what's the answer? 15.5K. Right? Did you get the same value or not? Right, so let's move on to the third measure, which is the mean. So how do we calculate the mean? We need to add up all the scores within this data set and divide them by the total number of cases or total number of staff. Okay, I'm going to take my calculator out and hide my face. Okay. All right, so 15 plus 18 plus 16 plus 14 plus 15 plus 15 plus 12 plus 17 plus 90 plus 95. So we get 307. Okay, 307, which is equal to 30,700K. 30,700, yeah? Divide by 10 because we have 10 staff. So you get 30.7. So that's your mean value. Or if you want to mudahkan, so it will be easier for you to compare, 31K. All right. So when you are asked a question, which of these three measures of central tendency should be selected as the one that represent your data set, in most cases, you should go with mean because mean takes into consideration everyone's salary. Okay. However, if our data set consists of an extreme value, one or two extreme value or extreme salary, okay, either too high or too low, it's just like so different than the kind of salary that everybody else is getting. Okay, so if that's the case, then mean is not the best measure of central tendency. Okay, let me just demonstrate it here. No, it's not curved yet. Right. So this is the amount of the salary, number of people. See, for example, so a lot of us staff working in Telecaberhat, they are earning around 12,000 to 18,000. If you can see, 8 staff are earning within this range of salary. But we have Dawood and Malik who are earning way more than what the others are getting every month. Maybe these are the CEOs or anak bos ke, for example. That's why their salary is far higher than the rest, maybe. But if we were to plot this into a chart, for example, or a graph, then you have something like this. But two people are here. Okay, so when we use mean to represent the salary that everyone else is getting, you'll get a value that is far more than what other people's are earning. How many people in this company earns around 30K or 32Ks or 29Ks? None. All of them, most of them are earning lesser. Okay. In fact, if you were to compare this data set with the value of measure of central tendency, mode and median looks more appropriate to represent this data set. Okay, because we have people, all of them, these 8 staff, earning around this range. Okay, so if I were to pick a measure of central tendency for this data set, mode and median looks more probable than mean. Okay, because we take into consideration everyone's salary and we do have two extreme values here, it pulls the value of mean to be higher than it should. Okay, only happen when you have extreme value, either too high or too low. then do not use mean as a representation of your data set. You should pick mode or median. In this case, mode looks better because we have several staff earning 12,000 and 14,000. Okay, clear? If you have any questions, you can ask me later in WhatsApp. All right. So when your data set has extreme value, for example, after you've done your test administrations, a lot of students are getting, for example, 95, 90 as their scores. But there's one student or two students that obtained 12 marks or 10 marks, for example. So if you were to calculate your measure of central tendency using mean, then your value will be lower than what everybody else is mostly getting. Okay, then if you have extreme value like this, don't use mean to represent your data set, but use mode or median. Okay, choose one that is more appropriate. Okay, so what's the point? I have not explained the rationale or why do we have to find measures of central tendency. What's the reason? How can this information be meaningful to us and tell us more about our students' performance? If we have information with regard to the value of the measures of central tendencies, you are able to compare performances across group. All right. For example, you are PSB teacher teaching maybe two different group. Tingkatan 3 Cempaka and tingkatan 3 Mawar. Mawar is not visible. Okay. So you've done test 1 for both groups and you are wondering which group performs better. Okay. You won't have that information exclusively if you were just to look at their scores, because scores are sporadic in nature. Some students will score higher, some students will score lower. So in order for us to make our comparison process easier and more valid, you need to find one score that represents tingkatan 3 Cempaka score and one score that compares tingkatan 3 Mawar, one score that represents tingkatan 3 Mawar score. Okay. Say, for example, you have calculated the mean value for these two groups. So, say, for example, the mean value for tingkatan 3 Cempaka is 90. And the mean value for tingkatan 3 Mawar is 75. Okay. Comparatively, based on this information, you know that tingkatan 3 Cempaka students have performed much better in test 1 in comparison to tingkatan 3 Mawar. Now is the time to ask why and explore what's wrong. Okay. These measures of central tendency provide us with this meaningful information that allow us to compare even across group, within schools, between schools, within district, within the across district, within states, even. Okay, and this is an important information for policymakers to decide what strategies or what follow-up strategies that can do after that. Okay, so after you have obtained this information that tingkatan 3 Cempaka has done way better than students tingkatan 3 Mawar for test 1, that is time for you to explore your own teaching for these two groups. Perhaps you have employed different teaching method. You were experimenting, for example. You were using more hands-on with this group as compared to this group. And now you know that hands-on activity work very well. Maybe after that, you want to focus more on hands-on activities to all the groups that you are teaching. Okay? Maybe there's something that you did in this group that caused them to be somewhat lagging behind in comparison to other groups. So it's time to start exploring so that you have information that can help you to improve your teaching practice and also students' learning after the test is over. Okay, so comparing student scores does have merit in teaching because it gets us to examine our own practice. All right, so there you go. Just by looking at a set of data set and calculating the measures of central tendency. Okay, so that's the end of our session. I hope that you have benefited from this particular video and it helps you and guide you in the course of doing your assignment. Okay, let's move on to the second video where I will be demonstrating how to find mode. I even say things incorrectly. How to find mode, median, and mean based on the actual data set or based on the format of the data set that you'll be getting that you will be working on in light of your assignment too. Okay, so till the next video, bye, take care, and assalamualaikum.